Alright, we're here for match number 1 with my wife muttering in the background on the play. This hand is fairly reasonable. Swiss Spear into Eidolon with some spells, always good. Opponent's username is Valola. Valola? Valola. Valola. La 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 Valola. Sure there is. Plenty of ways to make fun of it.
I thought you spelled baloney. Or bologna for a second.
Valola. Looks like we're up against Murktide, most likely. Usually Steam Vents into that. Could be Breach, but it's most likely Murktide. Either way, Eidolon's pretty good. They either have to use another removal spell to deal with it, or most of the spells they're going to play the rest of the game are going to take damage. So. No, but my opponent apparently thinks they are, because they have all the time in the world to do probably not a whole lot.
So they play like me.
That was a hard one. They played a land and played a spell to kill the Eidolon. Shocker. Didn't really require 2 minutes to figure out.
They're new.
No, they're not.
I'm trying to help them out.
You don't pick up and play Murktide if you're a new Magic player. Just not something people do.
Maybe it's new gift to them.
Unlikely. More likely they're double queuing. Or their internet connection sucks. Pass turn. They don't crack their fetch land. That's interesting. They must be light on lands with whatever they're playing. I still have no idea what they're exactly up to because, well, both deck. Okay, well, no, we still don't know because Murktide and that deck. Well, no, Breach doesn't usually play. No, they do play Dragon Rage Chandler, so hard to say. Hard to say. Love to draw a land here. Do you block? Let them do whatever they're going to do here. Opponent is guilty of some petty theft. Took the opportunity to kill their Chandler. We're not getting max damage out of this, but unless they specifically have Force of Negation, which I would be fine with them taking a 2-for-1 here. Does seem like they're on Murktide with a build that has at least one Brazen Borrower in the main deck. He was about to expressively iterate. Going to 8. Bless you. Land, please. So it might be proper to just go face with all these burn spells, but I figure putting out the Swift Spear will force them to react. Most we could do is put them to 2 here, which obviously puts a huge strain on their mana, but leaving the Swift Spear in play means they have to deal with it one way or another, or just continue to take damage. Especially since Brazen Borrower can't block it because it can only block flyers. And it's bobbling for a lot of bobbles. Okay, so they probably have a fetch land in hand if they're targeting themselves with a Mishra's Bobble. Do you like what's on top of your deck? Had to complete that or my wife might giggle. What's on top? Not much hair, I know.
Your hand.
Ah, yeah, I suppose it would be at the moment. That's your story and you're sticking to it? Is that what you said? That goes to 6, pass turn. Sure. Could try to play Boros Charm here, but they could easily have Spell Pierce. They have another iteration. Probably should have fetched for second copy of Steam Vents just to have more red mana, because at this point most of the red sources are going to cost them damage or come into play tapped, because they usually don't play something like what is it, sulfuric, no, not sulfuric acid, Sulfur Falls. They don't usually play. They usually play the Buddy Land and not the Buddy Land, the Inspiring Vantage equivalent. I can't think of the top of my head, but it comes into play tapped if you have more than 2 lands, and they don't usually play a basic mountain because it's a terrible card for their deck most of the time, because it doesn't cast most of their spells. They're more blue heavy, and they may not have any more basics to fetch, because Murktide usually only has 3 basic islands in their deck. Okay. Attack with our Brazen Borrower. Going to use the card we kind of care the least about, not being Lightning Helix here. Yep, of course they have Soul Pierce. It's not really a surprise. Land, please. That's not a terrible one. So force them to have actual factual counterspell instead of another Spell Pierce. And they would have to go to 2 to counter it, most likely. That's why I really think they should have fetched, especially since they were already below 6 anyway. They should have fetched with the Misty last turn cycle. As deliberately as they're playing, they really should be maximizing their little edges of their deck. Oh, so they fetch now. Cool. It goes to 2. Okay, so they're going to be playing a Murktide. Nope, Shredder. So they still have Counterspell up, most likely. So we still need to draw land or another 1 damage spell. Okay, that should be game. You get to connive, but there's no 1 card you can draw here, especially being tapped out. This is one matchup where we will miss having Firecraft. Sanctifier's fine, Path's fine. Deflecting Palm is fine. Skullcrack doesn't do much in this matchup. I think the other cuts are probably the Boros Charms. This is not the matchup for Blood Moon, or Wear Tear, or Smash, or Roiling Vortex, so I think that's just... I think most of the cards in this deck being 2-ofs make the sideboarding a little bit easier. A lot easier to side in 2-ofs than 3-ofs. You don't have to odd man out things.
If it's 3-ofs, it's an odd man out.
That's what I was saying. Most of the sideboard, for whatever reason, whoever built this deck did mostly 2-ofs.
Okay, never mind. Ignore me. I know nothing.
You know plenty.
Right now I do not.
Too tired? Never your wife's theme song for the night's sleep is rollin', 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 roll on, rollin',
Oh,
rollin'.
you're so wrong.
Or, I mean, we could do roll over, roll over.
That's the only one I want you to... Never mind. I'm so hoping that was not recorded.
Oh, it very much was. As my laugh goes red.
Not intentionally.
I was talking about your sleeping patterns. I think you decided to go a little bit of adult humor on that one.
No.
Oh. Why'd you go red?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Because there's no adult humor at all in that.
Oh.
Weird.
Okay, so our opponent kept 7. They take their normal copious amounts of time to make decisions. We play a Goblin Guide and attack. I know that's a hard decision. They have a counter spell in hand. Guessing they're going to play Ledger Shredder and the Mishra's Bauble. They just tap out for Ledger Shredder. That sounds like it's not the best available play to you. Great to me, but unless they have Force of Negation, they're just going to get in a lot of trouble this game. Alright, so they're going to have another Ledger Shredder, counter spell, and 4 unknowns. Okay, they're going to instead choose to expressively iterate. Hope they just leave a basic island here. Or just miss a land drop entirely. That would be fantastic too. They're going to know what the top card of our library is, and they do miss a land drop. That's kind of rough for them. Especially when they use the phrase, we still had all these. Okay, no, they're not going to miss land drops. Why would you play Dress Down against Burn? That just seems like an interesting choice. Okay, one plays a Ledger Shredder. They get to connive here. What did they target? They're targeting the Swizzle Spear. Okay. This is a situation where deflecting palm gets a little awkward. Because it's better when we're, ironically, it's better when we're on the back foot than when we're ahead like we are right now. Alright, no idea what we're going to be drawing, so we just go Rift Bolt to the face. Into 4, hopefully draw a burn spell or a haste creature and kill them. If such luck, so we'll get a redraw here. One's going to have Flusterstorm. So they'll go to 2. We'll be able to resolve Sanctifier. So they're going to have to leave a creature back at all times. They get to connive here, which is Not ideal when they're kind of struggling to hit land drops and whatnot, but still think it's best to resolve this while we can. Force them to have either another burn spell or another creature to keep these creatures in check. What I mean by deliberate, dear, their game clock is down almost 9 minutes compared to mine.
Okay. So they play like I do. You have plenty of experience in the waiting game.
Yes, but I have much more experience with my wife than a random stranger.
You better be.
Alright, pass. Opponent's at 2. We know they have Flusterstorm. We know they have Counterspell. So we know 2 of the 7 cards in their hand. I think the biggest limiting factor for them is currently mana. But with Flusterstorm and Counterspell in hand, I wouldn't expect us to resolve the spell anytime soon. As weird as this is, I just don't think we do anything. Because if we attack and they have a burn spell, we get blown out. Obviously, if they don't have one, they die. But it was quite likely that they did, so... Unfortunately, we can't resolve Lightning Helix there because Flusterstorm would have been able to counter it. Because they cast a spell, then they cast Consider. So Lightning Helix would have been the 3rd. Flusterstorm would have been the 4th card. Okay, so I'm guessing they're casting Murktide here. I guess hoping their Flusterstorm will be enough to keep them alive. Somehow did they not hit a 3rd land drop? Alright, so they going to take this opportunity to try to resolve Lightning Helix to screw up their mana. Should have waited until they resolved there's the Murktide. I'm honestly surprised as cautiously as they play that they would attack here. Because Path to Exile is certainly a card that would be on my radar if I was the Murktide player. I think we just let this get countered. Opponent gets to connive. Unless they draw their third basic island, they're not going to be able to play an untapped land this turn, so we're only playing around either Spell Pierce or Flusterstorm next turn. This should be lethal.
Lethal for them.
No, lethal for us. One of the advantages of having played a deck as much as I've played Murktide is I know generally what their play patterns are in the matchup. So the games where it's close like this, I generally have a pretty good idea of how the game's going to progress. And we got there. Alright, on to match number 2. Alright, back for match number 2 against someone named Atone. What are they atoning for? Who knows? And it's Kahira, so we're either against some type of elementals build or blue-eye control. This hand's fine in both matchups, so we'll keep. Obviously, we don't have the creature start, but we do have 3, 6, 9, 13, 17 points of burn in hand if it all resolves, so looks like we're up against elementals. Ah, Swizzle Spear. That's not a bad one to draw. We're put up to 19. I haven't. Oh, this is probably Lotus Field Jeskai control. Based on the obnoxiously slow start. And Flagstones of Tricaire is not a usual. Okay. Path to Exile does not see a ton of play currently in the modern format, so that's interesting. Pass here, see if our opponent does anything with their mana. So they're tapping out for expressively iterating. We'll go ahead and double Boros Charm them. They could have Force of Negation, which is, I guess, annoying, but could be worse, I suppose. Alright, your iteration resolves. Seachrome Coast will come into play tapped, so they will have no untapped blue mana here. Which means if we draw a burn spell, they're just dead. Okay. And you have Force of Negation, good for you. You do not, so we win. Yay! Alright, so some type of control list. Vortexes can come in. Chalice is debatable if they have it because they played Path. So get Searing Blaze out of the deck. The only elemental they probably have is Solitude. Possibly Subtlety or Fury. Probably trim a couple of Rift Bolts, just because we're bringing in the Vortexes. Not really a huge fan of the Blood Moons playing against them, but it is a card to bring in, especially since we can fetch planes potentially, and they would not be expecting Blood Moon out of us, so could potentially get their mana. But we have a 1-lander. On the draw, this is a decent 1-lander, so I think we'll keep it. That said, we'll not draw a second land to die, but it's definitely very weird for any style of control deck to be playing Inspiring Vantage and Sea Chrome Coast and whatnot, so there's got to be some twist to their deck. Okay, they have Core Firewalker, that's delightful. Our deck basically can't beat Core Firewalker since I didn't board in Path Exile. Yeah, well, that's a card. Well, I guess I could have played Bolt there, but oh, that just went right through a turn. How did it double skip turns? That's kind of obnoxious. Yep, let's move on. Hard to beat double protection from red. Apparently the Sunburn player hurt them very, very much. Still don't think it's worth bringing in Path. Seems pretty reasonable. The first game was so poorly played, or that second game I played so poorly. No, it was just so many stupid mistakes. Nothing even positive to take out of it. Seems like they have a Path Exile here. I was going to suspend 2 Rift Bolts, but now that I've seen Teferi, I can't really risk that, so that goes to 6. As I suspected, they were the Lotus Field variant. Okay, Lightning Helix. Skewer the critics. Alright, and we got there despite our opponent having multiple hate cards against us. Quick, easy, and to the point. Alright, quick wrap on this version of Burn. This was a list that I found that did well in one of the Montreal events. It was some type of 1K for a small local store in Quebec. Nothing too fancy on it, except it plays one copy of Basic Plains in the main deck and a couple copies of Blood Moon in the sideboard. I know some people have talked about trying Blood Moon and Burn. Usually it's mono red variants, but this is the closest probably list I've seen of somebody actually trying to actively play a Blood Moon or two on the sideboard. And it makes some sense. There's a lot of matchups like Amulet Titan and some of the 4-color creativity nonsense lists. If you resolve a Blood Moon against them, especially if they're not expecting it, it buys you a lot of time. And if you only have a couple of white cards in your deck, you can either fetch your Basic Plains before you play Blood Moon, or you can just board some of your white cards out, play more of a mono red deck, and then play Blood Moon. And your opponent's obviously caught off guard because it's not a traditional burn tool. If I were to probably tweak this list, I'd probably cut the Inspiring Vantage and maybe play a fifth fetch land, maybe something like Windswept Heath, or another thing that can fetch the red sort, or can fetch the Plains, but can also fetch Steam Vents or Sacred Foundry. Tarn's fine. I mean, keeps up the appearances of being just a normal burn list, and obviously, but I would want a fifth fetch land that can pick up Basic Plains and also still fetch for Sacred Foundries in a pinch if you're not in obviously a Blood Moon style game. That said, this kind of plan, I think, even more incentivizes having things like Ragavan in the list, because Ragavan enables potentially a turn 2 Blood Moon. Now, granted, if you're only playing two Ragavan and 2 Blood Moon, your chances are approximately like 7 or 8% to have them both in your opening hand. So, not terribly high, but still something to consider. And then the rest of the list, nothing too fancy. This is the traditional burn list, other than the mana base in the main deck, really. And then the sideboard, they chose to cut a Searing Blaze to put another copy of Lightning Helix into the list. No copies of Ragavan or anything that we'd been running lately over on the VODs channel, or on the live streams. And then the sideboard, you're seeing a lot of the numbers that I kind of like. You're seeing 2 Deflecting Palm, 2 Path, 2 or 3 Smash to Smithereen, 3 Whirling Vortex, only a couple copies of Sanctifier and Vec, and then you're seeing 2 copies of Blood Moon and kind of the flex slot that you'd sometimes see like Exquisite Firecraft and such. So, not a terrible card, possibly. Burn's got to try different tweaks and jukes because it's not the best positioned deck in the meta anymore, with it really lacking any Modern Horizons 2 editions other than Flame Rift, which the deck doesn't even play most of the time. So, yeah. C'est la vie. This will be the final Burn content on the main channel here until the new year. Obviously, the rest of the year will be the deck overviews primarily. So, if you like that kind of content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you in 2023 for new Burn content and the deck overviews continuing until we finish up all the decks in Modern.